Patricia, our mean HOA president, blocked our wheelchair ramp. When my daughter Abby complained, Patricia got angry. She drove her car over Abby's legs on purpose. Neighbors saw everything. Police arrested Patricia. She went to prison for 8 years. We used the lawsuit money to build a playground for all children. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Move your car right now, I shouted as the black Mercedes blocked our driveway ramp. My blood boiled as I saw who was behind the wheel, Patricia Henderson, our HOA president. This is a no parking zone. My daughter needs this ramp for her wheelchair. I pointed at Abby, my 13-year-old daughter waiting in her wheelchair at our front door. Her eyes were already filling with tears. Patricia rolled down her window and looked at me like I was dirt. I'll only be 5 minutes. Can't she just wait? I have important HOA business next door. Abby had been born with muscular dystrophy. Her wheelchair was her only way to move around. After saving for years, we had built this special ramp last month. Patricia had fought us every step of the way. Dad, it's okay. We can wait, Abby called out, her voice small. Her red hair was in 2 braids, and her favorite blue dress matched her sad eyes. She had been so excited for our trip to the duck pond today. I wasn't going to let Patricia ruin another day for Abby. No, we can't wait. We've waited enough. Move your car now or I'm calling a tow truck. Patricia sighed dramatically and checked her expensive watch. Fine. You people are so demanding. She glared at Abby as if her disability was a personal insult. I felt my hands shake with anger. This wasn't the first time she'd blocked our ramp. Last week, we missed Abby's doctor appointment because of Patricia's emergency HOA meeting that somehow required her to park in front of our house. As Patricia slowly backed up her car, I went to help Abby down the ramp. We had barely made it to the sidewalk when Patricia stepped out of her car. By the way, your ramp is still not up to HOA standards, she said loudly. The color doesn't match the approved palette, and it's too visible from the street. The board will be issuing a fine. I turned to face her, trying to stay calm. Patricia, we got approval for this ramp. Abby needs it to leave the house. Patricia's face turned red with anger. She was about 50 with perfect hair and expensive clothes, but her eyes were cold and mean. Well, I've told the board many times that letting wheelchair people in our nice neighborhood would cause problems. This just proves I was right. The way she said wheelchair people made me want to scream, but I stayed calm for Abby. My brave daughter spoke up. I'm not just a wheelchair person, ma'am. I'm a person first, Abby said in a clear voice, even though her lips were trembling. And you're breaking the rules by blocking our ramp. Patricia's eyes got small and angry. Listen, little girl, I don't need lessons from someone who can't even walk. I'm doing important work for everyone in this neighborhood, even ungrateful families like yours. That's enough, I said firmly. Get back in your car and leave us alone. Patricia stomped back to her Mercedes. This is why nice neighborhoods go downhill when they let just anyone move in. I thought she was going to drive away. Instead, Patricia started her car and suddenly drove forward, right at us. I will never forget what happened next. Abby couldn't move her wheelchair fast enough. In that terrible moment, Abby fell from her wheelchair trying to get away. Patricia's car didn't stop. The heavy front tires drove right over Abby's legs as she screamed in pain. The sickening sound of the tires crushing her small legs will haunt my nightmares forever. Patricia finally slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. She had deliberately driven over my daughter's legs. Abby! I screamed, falling to the ground next to her. Her legs were twisted in ways legs should never be. Blood was soaking through her jeans, and her face had gone white with shock and pain. Patricia got out of her car looking annoyed, not sorry. She shouldn't have fallen in the way. It's not my fault she can't control her wheelchair properly. Neighbors ran out of their houses when they heard Abby's screams. Mrs. Taylor from next door, who used to be a nurse, came running to help while someone called 911. Oh my God, Mrs. Taylor gasped when she saw Abby's legs. Don't move her, she told me as she carefully checked Abby. Sweetheart, stay as still as you can. Help is coming. Abby was in so much pain she could barely breathe, let alone talk. Tears poured down her face as she tried not to scream again. Patricia stood over us with her phone out. This is crazy. I'm calling my lawyer. That girl shouldn't have been in the street in the first place. Her father is clearly negligent. Something broke inside me. I stood up and faced Patricia with ice in my voice. You just drove over my daughter's legs on purpose. Put down your phone and wait for the police. Drove over her legs? Don't be silly. It was just an accident, if anything, Patricia laughed, but her eyes showed fear. She knew what she had done. Mrs. Taylor looked up from where she was helping Abby. I saw everything from my window. You drove straight at them and over that poor child's legs. That was no accident. Other neighbors nodded. Mr. Johnson from across the street shouted, I recorded it all on my security camera. You drove right over her legs on purpose. When the ambulance came, the medics had to give Abby medicine for pain right away. One of them looked at her legs and whispered to his partner, multiple fractures, possible crush injuries. They carefully lifted Abby onto a stretcher. The police arrived right after and started talking to everyone who saw what happened. When the officer went to Patricia, she started talking fast about being HOA president and how she was just trying to move her car when my clumsy daughter fell in front of her vehicle. Officer Wilson didn't believe her. Ma'am, I have 8 witnesses who say you deliberately drove at this child and over her legs after you had an argument. That's crazy. Do you know who my husband is? Patricia yelled. Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon and endangering a child, Officer Wilson said firmly. Patricia's shocked face when they put handcuffs on her would have made me happy if I wasn't so worried about Abby. I rode in the ambulance with my daughter, holding her hand and telling her everything would be okay. At the hospital, the doctors told me the terrible news. Both of Abby's legs had multiple fractures. The right leg had been crushed so badly they weren't sure if she would ever walk again, even with therapy and surgery. As Abby was taken to emergency surgery, I made phone calls, first to my wife who was at work in another city and immediately started driving home, then to my friend Dan who is a lawyer. This is attempted murder, Tom, Dan said after I told him everything. With all these witnesses and Mr. Johnson's security video that recorded it all, Patricia will face serious criminal charges. And we'll sue her for so much money she'll never recover. The next few days were all hospital rooms, police questions, and neighbors bringing food and offering help. I was surprised how many neighbors had their own Patricia stories, crazy fines for having the wrong color flowers or threats to take their houses for leaving bikes in the front yard. 1 week after it happened, Detective Lopez called me while I was sitting next to Abby's hospital bed. My daughter was still on heavy pain medication, and the doctors had just finished her 3rd surgery. Mr. Moore, we finished our investigation and added more charges against Ms. Henderson, she told me. When we looked at her phone and HOA emails, we found proof she was stealing money from the HOA, harassing people and targeting families with disabled members. I almost couldn't speak. What? Yes, sir. She had a written plan to force out what she called unwanted elements from the neighborhood. Your daughter wasn't her first target, but because of what she did to Abby, she'll be her last. I looked at my sleeping daughter, her small body lost in the big hospital bed, both legs suspended in casts and metal frames. My heart broke all over again. How could someone be so cruel? I've been a detective for 15 years, Mr. Moore, and I still don't understand how people can be this heartless, Detective Lopez said softly. But I promise you she's going to pay for what she did. The weeks that followed were the hardest of our lives. Abby had to learn how to deal with excruciating pain. She cried when the doctors told her she might never walk normally again. My wife Sarah took leave from her job to be with Abby day and night. I barely slept, tormented by the memory of Patricia's face as she drove over my daughter's legs. Our neighbors surprised us though. The same people who had quietly accepted Patricia's tyranny for years now found their courage. They brought meals, sat with Abby to keep her company when we needed to rest, and even took turns making improvements to our house to make it more accessible for when Abby came home. Mr. Johnson, whose security camera had caught everything, was especially kind. An engineer by profession, he designed special ramps for inside our house and helped install wider doors for Abby's wheelchair. My sister has cerebral palsy, he told me one evening as we worked on Abby's bedroom. I always hated how Patricia talked about those people at HOA meetings. I should have stood up to her sooner. We all should have, I admitted. It shouldn't have taken this to bring us together. 3 months and 5 surgeries later, Abby was finally able to come home. Our house had been transformed with ramps, rails, and a special bathroom. The neighborhood had organized a welcome home party, with banners and balloons lining our street. When our car pulled up, dozens of neighbors stood on our lawn cheering for Abby. My daughter smiled through her tears. I didn't know so many people cared about me. They always did, honey, Sarah told her. They just needed to be reminded what community really means. The day of Patricia's trial came too soon and not soon enough. Abby sat in the courtroom in her wheelchair, both legs still in casts and metal braces. The doctors had done 5 surgeries so far, and they said she would need at least 3 more. When they brought Patricia in wearing an orange prison outfit, our eyes met. Her fancy clothes and perfect hair were gone. She looked small and scared. The prosecutor presented the video from Mr. Johnson's security camera. The courtroom fell silent as we all watched Patricia deliberately aim her car at Abby and drive over her legs. Several jurors wiped away tears. One woman on the jury covered her mouth in horror. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that it was an accident, that she had panicked and hit the gas instead of the brake. But the video, combined with the emails showing her plan to force out families with disabled members, painted a clear picture of her intentions. When Abby took the stand to testify, I thought my heart would break from pride and pain. My little girl, who had always been shy and quiet, spoke clearly about what happened that day and how her life had changed forever. "I used to dream about dancing," she told the court. "Now I dream about just being able to walk to the bathroom by myself someday." The judge was very harsh during sentencing. Patricia got 8 years for assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, plus more time for stealing money and breaking civil rights laws. The judge mentioned Abby specifically. "This court finds it especially horrifying that you deliberately drove your vehicle over the legs of a disabled child, causing permanent damage, all because of your prejudice and anger. Your actions show a complete disregard for human life." Outside the courthouse, with all our neighbors who had become real friends, Abby looked up from her wheelchair. "Dad, is it bad that I don't feel happy seeing her go to prison? I just feel sad that someone could be so mean." I hugged my amazing daughter, crying as I held her. "That's because you have a good heart, honey." Something Patricia never had. Life changed dramatically after the trial. Our lawsuit against Patricia and the HOA was settled quickly. Her insurance company paid out a massive settlement rather than fight the overwhelming evidence. The money would cover all of Abby's medical expenses and therapy for life. The HOA was completely changed after Patricia was gone. Mrs. Taylor became the new president. Her first job was creating a neighborhood accessibility team, with Abby as its youngest member. "I want us to be the most accessible neighborhood in the state," Mrs. Taylor announced at the first meeting. "No family should ever feel unwelcome because of a disability." Abby threw herself into the project despite her ongoing pain and surgeries. She researched playground equipment that children with different abilities could use together. She drew pictures of paths wide enough for wheelchairs and walkers. At 13, she became an expert on accessibility codes and universal design. "If this happened for a reason," she told me late one night after a particularly painful therapy session, "then maybe the reason is so I can help other kids like me." A year later, Abby was at the opening of our neighborhood's new accessible playground, which was paid for mostly by the money from our lawsuit against Patricia and the old HOA board. The local TV news came to film it. "Abby, how has life changed since the accident?" the reporter asked. Abby, in her specially painted purple wheelchair with her legs still in braces, smiled at the camera despite everything she had been through. "I used to dream I could run someday. Now I know I probably never will. But I've learned that there are many ways to move forward in life. And thanks to this new playground, every child here can play together, no matter how they move." The cameras captured the ribbon cutting as Abby, with help from the mayor, officially opened Sunshine Playground, named after Abby's favorite song. Children of all abilities poured onto the specially designed equipment. A boy in a wheelchair raced up a ramp to a platform where a girl with leg braces waited. A child with autism found a quiet corner with sensory-friendly activities. They all played together without barriers or differences. As for Patricia, her husband left her while she was in prison and she lost everything: her house, her friends, and her freedom. We heard she was assigned to help patients in the prison hospital who had mobility issues, as part of her rehabilitation program. Sometimes justice happens in ways we don't expect. And sometimes the best revenge isn't what happens to those who hurt us, but how we use that hurt to make something good. 6 months after the playground opened, we received a letter from prison. Patricia had written to Abby. Sarah and I debated whether to show it to our daughter, but in the end, we decided Abby was mature enough to choose for herself. "I want to read it," she said firmly. The letter was short. Patricia apologized for what she had done. She wrote that working with disabled patients in the prison hospital had opened her eyes to her own prejudice. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just said she wanted Abby to know she regretted her actions every day. Abby was quiet for a long time after reading it. Finally she said, "I believe she's sorry. But that doesn't fix my legs." "No, honey, it doesn't," Sarah agreed, holding our daughter's hand. "But maybe it means she won't hurt anyone else," Abby added. "And that's something. That's my daughter, always finding the light in the darkness. She'll never run through a field or dance at her prom the way other girls do. But she's touched more lives than Patricia ever did with her fancy car and perfect lawn. Abby's playground welcomes many children with all kinds of abilities every day. And on a small sign near the entrance, there's a message that makes everyone who knows our story cry. For every child who has had to fight for their place in this world. Your scars tell your story, but they don't define your future. When people ask me how we survived such a terrible thing, I tell them it was because of Abby. Not once did she ask, "Why me?" Not once did she give up, even on her darkest days. And when she had every right to be bitter, she chose instead to build something beautiful. Not just a playground, but a community where everyone belongs. As for Patricia, I heard she gets out of prison next year. Some of our neighbors worry she'll come back, but I'm not concerned. This isn't her neighborhood anymore. It belongs to Abby and all the other children who play together without seeing differences. Sometimes I look at my daughter as she works with the city council on accessibility issues or helps a new family with a disabled child feel welcome, and I think about how one person's hate changed her life forever. But then I remember how her love changed everyone else's lives too. And that, in the end, is the best revenge of all.